So these are all sorts of outstanding liabilities that the licensing division processes, and you can see the savings to the public on page 19. That's all I have for the licensing portion. Are there any questions?
I do have a question. Back on page 12
Yes.
and 13, I'm looking at folks without workers' comp coverage. And on page 13, it shows total exemptions. Those seem like very high numbers. Are those sort of in line historically in the past? I mean,
So starting in, I think, 2012, we started asking for a recertification upon license renewal. Prior to that, it was only when a license was issued whether we asked whether they had workers' compensation or not. So at the time we started this, about 60% of our licensees had an exemption on file, and I think it was pretty similar breakdown by classification. It's only gone down a couple percentage points since we started asking. So I'd say historically these are in line.
okay. Thank you.
Is there any public comment? All right. The next item is our testing program update with our expert tester, Wendy Balance. Thank you, Wendy.
If you'll turn to page 22, that's where the testing update starts. The testing division is responsible for developing and administering CSLB's 46 examinations at the 8 test centers around the state. You can see from the table, we scheduled over 43,000 exams in the last 12 months. Most applicants are required to take a law and business exam as well as specific trade examination, and administration numbers are up from last year. All of CSLB's licensing examinations are based on current occupational analyses of the trade, which provide a current description of construction work performed by contractors in that trade. We keep all of the examinations on a 5 to 7 year cycle. 2 exams, as you can see on then page 23, are in the occupational analysis phase, and 10 are in the exam development phase. We're working on filling 2 vacancies. And then if you flip to page 25, that's the start of the January through November 2016 interim report on the Consumer Satisfaction Survey. This just covers the months of January through November. An annual report usually comes out in April. It is based on surveys of people who filed complaints against licensed and unlicensed contractors, and it covers complaints closed during that period, January through November of 2016. Table 1 shows the historical results of the 8 satisfaction questions. Typically, question 4, I was treated courteously, gets the highest rating all across the years, and the lowest rating is for question 7. Historically, the action taken in my case was appropriate. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Wendy. I suppose to get the high rating on the service is good, very good. So the next is the strategic plan update. There's a discussion, excuse me. Oh, public comment? Are there any public comments on this, the testing? No?
Madam Chair, I just want to ask a question. On the customer satisfaction survey, do we have a target of some kind? Do we know when I mean, we're getting these, they're trending about the same, so we're feeling good about that. I mean, we're not seeing like any dip-offs where, you know, because I mean, there's going to be a number of people who aren't going to like the outcome. I mean, that's, and seriously, if it's like 50-50, that might be a good thing, right? I don't know, but in your mind, Wendy, do you? I mean, these are pretty static, so yeah.
We've probably reached the height of satisfaction that people who had problems with their contractors are going to come to. Mm-hmm. There is a ceiling above which you cannot expect people with unhappy experiences to go.
Right.
And you can see historically, I like to call it the zigzag effect. It goes up just a little bit, up and down and up and down. That's normal variation in the statistics.
Right. So we're feeling good about where
Yes.
we're at here, and we like the fact that it's pretty pretty static, even though you're right, there are variances in statistics, but it's relatively static over the years,
It is.
so.
Nothing
Good.
greatly new. If something dropped off, you would know, and David would know.
Right. Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. So the next item on the agenda is strategic plan update, discussion and possible action, 2017-18 licensing examination objectives. So again, since Laura's in the hot seat and she's been on the job, 30 days?
About,
You're
yeah.
an expert, you're an expert. We will ask you to report on this, what you've gotten from the staff.
Okay, thank you. And I will note, the staff haven't added any new objectives since the committee and the board last reviewed these. Could see where we're going on the current objectives, and then if the committee has anything they want to add, this would be the opportunity to do so. So starting with objective 1.1, licensing staff have completed the revisions to the application package and outreach material, working with public affairs on that, and we very much appreciate their assistance. And then now, staff are working with the IT division to get all the programming changes made. So actually, our target date should be pushed out since we're not fully completed, but expected to be done, I believe, in about the next month or so. So that could be March 2017. The second item has been completed. That was done at the September board meeting. Item 1.3, identify specific criteria for examination waiver and application review. So staff is working on this process, and actually will require regulations, and the manager in the legislative unit is working on this right now. So we will probably start the process for that towards the end of this year. So that would be September 2017. The next item, 1.4, research and implement measures to reduce initial application processing time. This is ongoing. We have done a lot of work on mapping the process in licensing in each unit and looking for greater efficiencies. Some of it will require IT changes to make it more automated. The licensing application process is very paper-driven, not automated at all, so we're looking at ways to speed up the process with some IT changes. So licensing has done their portion, so we met the target date. We're waiting for the final implementation. Item 1.5, Susan noted at the beginning, we changed the date. This is conducting a study of pass-fail rates of exams in other states. So Wendy in testing has been working on this. This also requires some additional IT resources to complete the study. Item 1.6, developing an online smart application to reduce application return for correction rates. This is somewhat related to item 1.1, and staff have done the work for this, and that is in process of being completed with the IT division. And finally, our last item is 1.7, researching the handyman exemption. The board and the committee have talked about this at length over the past few years. Staff recommends at this point dropping the objective due to past concerns raised by board members and stakeholders. Are there any questions?
I agree. We haven't made any progress. I think there's too much.
Turn your mic on, please, Linda.
I'm sorry. Linda Clifford, I think there's too much jello. You know, we're pushing one side, it goes out on the other side, and so we had a very hard time really identifying how to resolve and pinpoint the issue, because it kept growing for license Bs and all
Yes.
that. So do we need a motion to take this off? I would make that motion to take this off the strategic plan.
Second.
So just to clarify, it's to remove objective 1.7 from the
Yes.
strategic plan? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Linda Clifford?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, is there any public comment on the changes to the strategic plan objectives? Thank you. David De La Torre.
Aye.
Ed Lang?
Aye.
Frank Schetter,
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Okay, good. Actually, on this item, I do have a question. Some of the strategic objectives are impacted by recent IT progress and status reports, and I am hoping that we can get those IT completion dates or status reports on how these are impacted on our next board meeting. Okay?
Yes, we'll have at the next board meeting, we'll have an update to the strategic plan that pertains to our administrative and IT items, and those will be included.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Can I ask one question also? On the item that we took off, does it make sense that we should, in some future discussion, have a discussion about the $500, the cap that hasn't changed for umpteen years?
You could choose to put it on a future agenda if you want staff to look into it further.
That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
I don't know how long it's been, but
It's
it's
a long
been a
time.
long time, and perhaps there's just an adjustment, even if it's a small one, that needs to occur.
Okay. So you want to put that on the next licensing committee agenda?
Please.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you, Laura. And the discussion on possible action, do we have public comment I need to ask at this point? No? I did, okay. Even though, discussion on possible action regarding the Little Hoover Commission report, Jobs for Californians, Strategies to Ease Occupational Licensing Barriers. So again, this is something we have just started to, we've made some determinations and some recommendations here, but this work will continue and more report at the board meeting next month. Laura, would you
Right.
explain what this?
Our council presented at the December board meeting the report that the Little Hoover Commission released about occupational licensing. I think it has 8 total recommendations, and there's information in your packet starting on page 30 with a summary of the recommendations, and then there are staff comments after each recommendation, and specifically staff recommends that a few of these items be researched further by CSLB staff and then report back to the committee and the board on the findings.
I'd like to just go into a couple of those items. The first one is item 3, and that's regarding reciprocity for licensees. And what the commission is recommending is that the state require reciprocity for all individuals coming into the state, and it's with some type of either partial reciprocity or whatever. So what they're requesting is that we identify if licensing requirements are the same or substantially different in other states, and to grant partial reciprocity for those licensed in states with appropriately comparable testing and education requirements. Currently, this state only has reciprocity with Nevada, Utah, and that's it? And Arizona. So I think we're recommending that the board direct staff to study CSLB's existing reciprocity agreements. I think what should probably be broadened to see how other states also view us in terms of, how do we go into, if our applicants or licensees go to another state, what happens to them? What are their exam requirements? And, just seeing, are we happy with what we have, or do we want to broaden it? So that would be my recommendation on number 3, is just to broaden it, to say, look at other states as well.
And did you have a comment? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So the Little Hoover Commission, usually their reports result in some sort of legislative action. And so I think the idea behind this item is to try to get ahead of that so that you can analyze whether you want to make changes, or whether, if a legislative proposal comes out, if you've already done your research on these items, then you have some information to move forward with in determining whether to support a potential legislative proposal or oppose it, or make modifications or recommendations for it. So I think the registrar's point is well taken, because just looking at what you have existing is probably not going to be satisfactory for the legislature. So you probably want to look at all other states to see whether they have comparable licensing requirements and if they're substantially similar. That way you have that information in hand.
Thank you. I would also just note, in my other role in legislation, which I'm a little behind on, there has been a bill introduced on this topic, and I have heard from the Assembly Member's office asking for more information about our existing reciprocity agreements and why we don't have more extensive agreements.
Chair, I'd like to recommend that we do this too, because I used all the reciprocity. I had reciprocity in all those states. I believe Idaho also may be a state that we have reciprocity in, because I had a license there. And we don't have in New Mexico, nor Oregon, nor Washington. Those are all states that are right here. So anything we could do to do that, I found it extremely useful, so. I don't know if we need a motion or what, but.
I have one comment on it. I know in other states, their lien laws and some of their other construction laws are dramatically different than ours. And I think the trade part of the exams are probably pretty good, but would we require that they take the law portion of our exam to make sure they're current on?
We do require licensees from other states to still take our law exam.
And Frank, all the other states require too. I had to take the law, the business and the law portion of the exams in Nevada, Idaho, Arizona, and Utah, even though the trade portion, I was able to do the reciprocity. So all the other states look at it the same way, and they are different. You have to study. So I make a motion that we expand our reciprocity the way you guys come back with after your research. We look out and see what's available to us and what we might be able to do.
I second the motion.
The way you word the motion, we would just accept it, or we would
Well,
get to review it?
No, I think it has to be, is it legislative?
I think it's more of, at this point,
To direct
you can do a
staff.
couple of
Direct
different
staff?
things on
Okay.
this. One is that you can direct staff at this point, or what you might want to do too is consider putting this on your strategic plan, so that when the legislature does come back to you and say, what's this board doing with these issues from the Little Hoover report? It's on your strategic plan, you're updated on at every meeting. So, you could go two different ways. Either way, staff would be updating you on it.
Okay, so I'd like to amend my motion to say that I would like to recommend that we put this on our strategic plan and that staff move forward to keep the board updated with regards to the availability of reciprocity.
I second.
Susan Granzella?
Aye.
Linda Clifford?
Aye.
David De La Torre?
Aye.
Ed Lang?
Aye.
Frank Shutter?
Aye.
Johnny Simpson?
Aye.
And then the other item that staff is recommending that the board look into is item number 5. And that item is, it says, with the Department of Consumer Affairs serving as a clearinghouse of best practices and providing guidance to other departments as needed, all licensing authorities should take the following steps to make it easier for former offenders to gain employment. And there was legislation last year, correct, Laura, that would have eased, was there something coming up or that was going to ease up the,
There was maybe about 2 years ago, and then
Yeah.
I think we'll see more legislation this year as well.
so if you look on here, there's a couple of recommendations to post on our website, a list of criteria that individuals that do have criminal records, how they could gain their license. And then they talk about background checks. And then the third one is to follow the Bureau of Security Investigative Services model and create an informal appeals process. I know Christy had a little bit information on that, but here are the comments on it. But we do recommend that the board direct staff to review this recommendation, again, perhaps putting it on your strategic plan. But Christy, did you have any follow-up on it?
So the recommendation was to examine whether there was any other way to do informal intermediate appeals to help defray the costs to people who want to challenge a denial of a license. And they recommended that the agencies look at the BSIS model. But the BSIS model is a statutory committee. It's called the Disciplinary Review Committee. There's 3 of them, and they meet 2 to 6 times a year. It's an open meeting, so it would have to be noticed like your board meetings or your committee meetings. It would be public. And BSIS has a high volume of denials, whereas, they get hundreds per month. Whereas I don't think you have quite as many that they do. So it would you could look at it to see if it might make sense from a resource perspective, because they tend to be a little cheaper than doing a formal administrative hearing with an administrative law judge for you, just expense-wise. So you could take a look at it, but know that it would be a workload impact, because your staff would have to actually have noticed meetings for that committee. And they're usually staffed by people in the industry, and you have way more types of licenses than the BSIS. The Bureau has 2 or 3 licenses, so it's a little easier to streamline those types of licenses and staff those committees with licensed individuals. So anyway, if you're interested, we could bring back the analysis of how that process works, just so you can see and how much it costs, how many they do. But just know that it would be a formal noticed committee that you would be considering.
Can I ask a question about how many people have appealed their license denial?
Of our denials?
Yeah.
I think it's earlier in the packet. Let me find.
Well, I see here in 2016, it says we denied 49 and 90 on probation.
Right, if you look at these numbers, it's about 10 or 11 to 12 a month average, on these numbers right here.
The appeals are right underneath the denials.
Well, but isn't this for criminal issues, Laura?
That is.
Not just denied in general, but,
These should just be the initial licensure numbers.
I think they're all, right?
yeah, this is all. I don't know where, because to me, this just pertains, and I could be reading it wrong, but to me, this just pertains to those individuals that were denied a license because of a criminal conviction.
Oh, I see what you're saying, that the denials are. I thought, well, I'll have to check for the next meeting. I thought this was specific to those, but perhaps it's a higher number.
So this is, but when you were looking at the other page, was that for all the denials? I guess I'm confused. Frank, did you want to know if it was for all denials or just for criminal conviction?
Well, how many denials do we have appealed? Is this the magnitude of this problem, I think, is what I'm looking for.
I don't know, maybe David knows a little bit of information. I don't see it being a huge workload. If it's only 49 like we have.
Yeah, it's not a significant workload for us now.
And then maybe, not all of those are going to be appealed, right?
Correct.
They're denied for various reasons, not enough experience or...
Yeah.
On page 14, right, you have your criminal background unit statistics, you have your denials and your appeals, and your probationary license is issued, so your appeals are, and that's per year, right? 39, 36, 23, 21, 27, 13.
It's a small amount.
Per year, yeah, it's not very many.
So if you want staff to look into this further, we could look and see what BSIS numbers are, how many they receive, how many are denied. We do, staff does already, or the CSLB already posts the information online that the recommendation talks about, so it's really just the third part of this recommendation if you want further investigation.
I have one question, Madam Chair. The end of the first paragraph on 5, it says, for former offenders, does this broaden the numbers that would be looked at? Or is it all encompassing that? Or should that be spelled out? It's on page 31. I'm just curious, does it give us right to expand that? It says former offenders. It didn't say what misdemeanor. You see what I'm saying?
So I see Item 5 starts with the Department of Consumer Affairs. Are you in
Yes.
that or in A?
Yes, I'm in that.
It's in that paragraph at the end.
Yeah, it's at the end.
Oh, easier for former offenders, I'm sorry.
Yeah, does that expand what we look at now?
No.
No.
Okay, so will that be spelled out when it says, to make it more,
Make
for
it
me,
easier for them to gain
understandable?
employment.
Yes.
So CSLB does have already regulations that kind of give us guidelines on how we treat convictions for applicants. So we have, based on the length and the severity of the conviction, how many years have passed. So we do have kind of that schedule already in place to how we treat these convictions.
Okay,
So the information is available. We could probably make it easier for people to understand.
yeah. It would be for me, because I looked at that and can I lump them all together or what, so, thank you.
As kind of a general comment, this item 5 looks like following steps to make it easier for former offenders to gain employment. Sounds more like licensing for specific occupations rather than being a contractor to me. But I know, being, a contractor, the state has a lot of problems related to requirements that, for schools. Somebody who's a former offender, depending on what they did, can't work at a school. A lot of secure state buildings are the same way. County and city also are the same way. And the federal government has some pretty good restrictions based on that. And I think it's going to take a bigger coordination than just what we could do here to help them out.
So I think just again, this item may come up through the legislature or on the sunset report. So you may want to consider putting this on your strategic plan just to monitor. Or, to have staff review it and the implications of it.
I think that one of the issues the staff raised is whether you think you should explore alternative hearing and appeal opportunities for people that have their licenses denied. And that's kind of the question. And I think, again, it's good to at least do some research so that if you do have legislation that comes up, your staff's equipped to answer whether it would make sense for your licensing pool to do it based upon the number of appeals and the types of convictions that are coming through. So, and also looking at whether you could save any money from a resource perspective, because the administrative hearings can be quite expensive, and there may be an opportunity to save money with a less formal procedure. So it might be worth having staff study the issue and bring back further information on the issues that you've raised today.
So is it that our motion from Linda was for item number 3?
Right.
And now do we have a separate motion for item number 5 for the further study, or, do we have a motion for that?
I guess I'd make a motion that we take staff's recommendation, that they take a look into this. I'm not convinced that we're not doing a really good job already of moving people pretty well through the system as well as we can. I think the denials they're almost black and white, they come down to a point where, it's kind of like, we can't do this one, or this is great, let's push it forward. But I don't know that for a fact, because it's been a while since I've looked at it. So I agree with staff's recommendation to have you guys take a look at it. So I would make a motion that the staff review this recommendation further and report back on whether you think we can improve, or if we have to answer this question from the legislature, what is our answer going to be?
A second.
Any public comment? Okay. Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Linda Clifford.
Aye.
David Delatorre.
Aye.
Ed Lang.
Aye.
Frank Shutter.
Aye.
Johnny Simpson.
Aye.
Very good. The next agenda item is discussion regarding CSLB license classification and classifications and regulations that authorize contractors to install energy storage systems. Now, at the December board meeting, board member Frank Shetter requested that this item be placed on the future agenda. Since that time, he has indicated that the issue has been resolved and is expected to make a motion to table the item. Mr. Shetter?
Yes. I'm not sure it's completely resolved, but I just think at this point in time, it's more complicated than I would have imagined, and we need to table it so there's more time to review it. So I would make a motion to table this item.
I just have a question. So are you tabling it with an idea that it will be brought up at a later date, or are you just deciding you don't want to discuss it further?
I just don't want to discuss it further right now. If I want it on the agenda, I'll ask for it then.
Okay, well, then I don't think you need to table it. I just wouldn't make a motion at all at this time, because otherwise, then it has to be brought up at the board meeting and the motion discussed about whether it should be tabled or not. So if you don't want it to discussed further, I just wouldn't have any action on this item.
So I amend the motion to take no action at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other comments from board members, committee members, the public? Well, let's have a motion for adjournment then.
Second.
Susan Granzella,
Aye.
Linda Clifford,
Aye.
David De La Torre,
Aye.
Ed Lang,
Aye.
Frank Shetter, Johnny Simpson.
All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marlo Richardson, and I'm going to be calling to order the February 10th Enforcement Committee meeting. Heather, will you please call roll?
Joan Hancock.
Here.
Pastor Herrera.
Here.
Marlo Richardson.
Here.
Frank Shutter.
Here.
Susan Granzella.
Here.
And Ed Lang.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to start by briefly talking about our new career advancement training, which was presented by the Enforcement Committee Division staff. I personally was able to attend all 3 sessions that were attended by 60 personnel. The training was designed to encourage upward mobility of the personnel and utilized instructors from enforcement and the CSLB's personnel unit. I had the chance to meet with the students in the class, and they discussed their interest and were extremely enthusiastic for the opportunity to promote. I'm pleased that the Enforcement Division is encouraging their staff growth by promotion by offering high-quality in-house training. Classes like that not only help develop our staff, but provide us with more professional personnel. Speaking of high-quality staff, Kate Howard, if you could please come up to the front. Right there for right now. Just give us a second. Kate has worked for the state of California since 1987 and has been a CSLB staff member since 2005. For the last 3 years, Kate has worked in the Sacramento Intake Mediation Center as a consumer services representative. In the IMC, Kate has consistently distinguished herself as a hard worker whose performance far exceeds the expectations for her position. The most recent evidence can be found in the 2016 IMC production statistics. Kate settled an amazing 65% of her 246 licensee cases with restitution to the public, over double the CSR goal, settling 30% of cases. Incidentally, that equals to 160 cases closed with restitution by Kate. Kate has accomplished all this while remaining one of the friendliest and professional staff members of all the Enforcement Division. Kate, on behalf of the CSLB staff and management team, it's my pleasure to present you with this well-earned certificate of recognition. We'll get one with you guys, then we'll get up there. Perfect. One more with. Come on, Dave. Come on. Dave's always shy. Don't be shy.
Yes, there you go. Beautiful. Good job, Kate.
Okay.
Is there anyone that has any comments before I continue? All right, moving on to agenda item B.
Just starting.
Public comment session for items not on the agenda and future item requests. This agenda item is provided for public comment pertaining to any items on the agenda as well as for items which are not on the agenda. However, the committee cannot take any action on any items not listed on the agenda. Are there any individuals who wish to address the committee at this time?
Well, yes, thank you. Richard Marcuson, representing the Western Electrical Contractors Association and Associated Builders and Contractors. And I want to thank the enforcement staff and the chief and the board for their continued efforts to work with DLSE on enforcement of California's electrician certification program. As you know, there was a meeting recently to discuss various enforcement options, and it is gratifying to us in the industry that this is still on the topic and still is an important enforcement function for the board, and we appreciate that very much. And secondly, on behalf of the Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Contractors of California, I want to thank the registrar. She came to a recent meeting here in Sacramento of PHCC, took a lot of questions from contractors, and we really appreciate her efforts to come and field some of those barbs and arrows, and just did a great job of representing this board with a group of contractors, and thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Right. Agenda item C, Enforcement Program Update. Deputy Chief Jesse Flores, if you can, where's Jesse? He's here? Sorry. You want to provide the update?
Good morning. My pleasure to give the update. On page 46, I'm sure you guys read all the highlights. I'd like to address a couple. Top page 46, you will notice that we continue to hold our contractors accountable for permit requirements. In this case, the contractor was required to give back $7,300 because he or she failed to give a permit. We continue to work with the HVAC industry and to make sure, and the building department to make sure we get compliance on permit issues. Page 47, a repeat offender. This guy, 16 citations, 2 criminal cases, and of course we caught him again. He got 3 years of probation, paid fines, and has to do 10 days community service. Hopefully, Mr. Bailey, we don't meet him again, but if he does, you know we're out there and we'll be taking action appropriate. Page 49, the complaint handling statistics. As you will soon read in the activities and accomplishment reports, we closed close to 20,000 complaints in 2016, 9 short of what our goal was. So 19,991 was what we were seeking. 3,712 legal actions against violators. 1,497 cases referred for criminal prosecution. Recovered $18 million through mediation. 66 of our complaints were closed within 90 days, which is a huge accomplishment. And at the end of 2016, we had only 27 age cases. Page 50 and 51, the board goal of managing a manageable caseload for our investigators is between 30 and 40. We try to keep it at 35, but at the end of the 2016, we had 31 per investigator, which is really a manageable caseload. It also, in addition to that, we were able to maintain our board's goal of closing 10 investigations per year, per investigator, and we accomplished that really well, so thank you to our investigators. Page 52, regarding our 52, 53, 54, regarding our statewide investigative fraud team, who also had a productive year, had over 3,400 cases referred to them through sting, sweeps, and leads. It resulted in 1,637 administrative actions, which over 50% of those were criminal referrals, which is one of our goals. Page 54 to 56 talks about our citation civil penalties. We assessed over $607,000, and stop orders, we issued 439 stop orders to individuals using employee labors without a workers' comp policy. And on page 55 and 56, we continue to work with our partnering agencies to combat the underground economy. And I'd like to note that in 2016, we found 70% of our targets were not in compliance. So we continue to reach out, do outreach and education to assist those not in compliance to become into compliance. And on page 57 is our case management data, where we issue citations, accusations, and arbitrations, and those numbers show what we've collected, what we have alleged, and what was returned to consumers in the state. That concludes my update. I think there any questions?
I have a question. Sure. Hi. In the on page 46, the HVAC contractor case, I love seeing that it looks like, in some way, this contractor agreed to the refund. It's a remarkable thing to see that, and that it ended up in a conciliatory fashion. But you indicated that the board is working with building departments, and I'm wondering how we are doing that. In what capacity are we working with building departments,
I'll let the
city
chief-
and county?
Sure, I'll let the chief take that.
What we've done is we've established a building permit complaint form specifically for building officials and their staff to file complaints. And just to further add to what Jesse said, the policy is if you do work that required a permit, you didn't obtain a permit, you're responsible for doing whatever work is necessary to comply with that code requirement. And we're receiving approximately, I think, around 400 referrals a year from building departments regarding work that was done without a permit. And that's resulting in about 25% of those are resulting in a legal action.
Is that a mandatory thing for them to file a complaint form with the state?
It is not mandatory for the building departments to file, and there's approximately 490 building departments in the state. So as you can imagine, we have stronger working relationships with some than others. So it is relationship driven. They need to see that something positive is occurring when they do file that complaint and we do take action. But one of the larger goals with the HVAC industry is to move the needle, to show that by this enforcement action, we're going to achieve 50% compliance in the HVAC industry. One of our board members, David Diaz, has been very instrumental in helping us to track that success. I don't have the data today. I know we started at approximately 15% compliance, and it has increased since that time.
So you said it's not a mandatory requirement for cities and counties to file that complaint form. Is there anything that we could do to liaison with other state departments that oversee, such as the commission, Building Standards Commission, or?
Well,
I know it's a vague area.
I think
this is a
one
big
thing-
ask, but it does seem like, this is a successful outcome. It would be lovely to see this kind of thing happen more often.
What I can do, if the committee wishes, is to discuss this with Nancy Springer. She's the building official that's on the board, and see what ideas Nancy would have to perhaps provide for us to make a presentation at the California Building Officials Annual Meeting to emphasize that we do have this program and we're here to work with them. As far as legislation and working with the Building Standards Commission, it would have to be a separate discussion with them.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much for your report, Jesse. Just two things. One is a comment and one is a question. You noted here that your, I guess, staff now is going out to associations, trade associations, to speak on what we're doing here at Contractor State License Board. And I think that's a really, really great idea because they are partners with us in trying to enhance the objectives and mission of the organization. And I was glad to hear that, Cindy, that you went to speak to some contractors too. I think that's a win-win for both the industry and for Contractor State License Board. The other question I had is on page 7 of 49 here at the bottom chart here, and where you have the current number of staff, ERs and CSRs, which totals 83. Does that staff, is that include your staff that works on SWIFT and LEFT, or are those separated out? So do you have separate staff that are not part of this 83 working on SWIFT, or?
If you're looking at the chart on the bottom of page 49, this is specific to the reactive complaint investigations. It does not include SWIFT.
Okay. Okay.
Or case management. The enforcement division is comprised of 214 personnel. But what you're looking at there is what our number one focus is working the consumer filed complaints timely.
Okay.
So that's the staff that handles the consumer filed complaints.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just wondering if if you expected these 83 also to be part of a SWIFT team. I thought that might interfere with their abilities to close cases.
No,
Yeah,
the 83
okay.
there are dedicated to consumer file
Perfect.
complaints. SWIFT is completely separate.
Okay.
And we look at this as being the priority.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Any other comments or questions? Retired CHP captain and current CSLB trainer, Doug Galbraith, can you please provide us with the training update?
Good morning. I know you're going to be on that, Rick. If you refer to page 58 and 59 in your packet, it does summarize the training that we did in 2016. To summarize, we did have our 5th Enforcement Academy in April in Norwalk. And we also were able to complete a series of advanced classes to the investigative centers to complement the academy training. We also, based on some of the incidences that have happened across our country, we did have safety and security training by a former CHP SWAT commander to equip our personnel not only to have an awareness of their environment around them, but what to do in an emergency and how to, optimize their situation to survive. I really think that should be a yearly training because we can get very complacent in our workplace. And, a lot of things that the SWAT commander gave us were different codes, and people were going down around the building saying, yeah, you caught me. I was in, code blue and I should have been in code white or whatever. But it was nice to talk about it because you can get so involved in what you're doing that you don't respond to whatever's happening in a way that could result in saving yourself. Marla talked about the career advancement training. This really spoke to our staff in a way where they knew that the board and executive management was making an investment in them as an asset. And a lot of the feedback told us that it wasn't only a needed class, it was very appreciated class. A lot of times our people are not in a position to be the most competitive candidate. And for us to give them that information, to put them in that position, they not only realized it, but there's a lot of complicated information about the application process and, experiences throughout CSLB that makes them a stronger candidate. And I really got a lot out of that class. A lot of the people that attended the class were our biggest advertisers of that class because they went back and they said, hey, if you haven't signed up for that, you need to go. And for our newer employees to know how to navigate their path and not expend like a decade of doing their job and working on their career from day one, I think that's the message that was given to them. You're always working towards advancement so that you can make the decisions later in your career. I want to say that we have concentrated on SWIFT training recently, and last year we did training in northern and southern in our sting operations. We're good at what we do. We just want to enhance operations, not only to be safer or be more efficient or more effective, but we also wanted more successful prosecutions. So we did have guest presentations from law enforcement for them to convey to them their law enforcement mindset so that we can be safer and more tactical. And we wanted the DA to be there to cover the points to make us, or cover the points that will help them do their job so that we can have successful prosecutions. And not only that, working and having them making presentations, the camaraderie that is built with that really makes it easier when we go in and talk about our cases. They know who we are, they know what we're trying to do, they've made an investment, and they've always been very willing to help us out. We also, in SWIFT last year, we've done some surveillance training, vehicle surveillance training. A lot of that is making sure that legally we do the right thing, but also we look at the techniques of how to do vehicle surveillance successfully. And we also did SWIFT team building training. It's not enough just to be a unit. working as a team and being innovative and sharing their mindset and really their experiences makes us a lot stronger. It was really well received, and I think that they're aware that each one of them is responsibility for the credibility of the team. And it's a proactive team, and it's a highly successful team, and I think they've bought into being the best that they can be. In 2017, I'm happy to say we're going to have our 6th Enforcement Academy, March 6th through the 10th. And then we're going to complete Sting training in Central Swift and do the surveillance training both in Southern and Central. And through these processes, we've also developed a new investigative report format that's being tried out in Northern Swift. And it's very close to being rolled out. And these things are important, and this comes out of, enhancing our operations. It just shows that we want to be progressive, and it's not enough to do our reports. If we can enhance our reports where the DA looks at it as a more professional form, a more efficient form for our investigators, it's the right thing to do. So that's where we are. And once we finish the Sting training, which will be done February 27th and 28th, we're going to start on sweep training for each of the 3 SWIFT units throughout the state. Any questions? Yes?
Just a comment. I really commend you for what you're doing in the training aspect, and one point that you mentioned about the SWIFT team and the training that you're in there, particularly for investigative reports.
Yes.
You can't imagine how much city attorneys and DAs appreciate a well-written investigative reports for a filing. I mean,
Right.
that is, I think, their number one concern, that they want all the facts, the situation, the evidence, and I commend you for really emphasizing in that area.
Yeah, thank you. You can do a great operation, but if it's not in the report and it doesn't stand the test, it's going to fall short and a lot of wasted time. So there is a lot of emphasis on that, and I appreciate that comment. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug. I just have to reiterate what a great job you guys are doing on training. It's a lot of work with the technical training, but that old saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So that career advancement training that you guys have put on.
Well, we really
Great.
appreciated you taking the time to come to each of those meetings and for them to see the board's interest in that. That really spoke to them, so thank you very much.
No, thank you. And I hope that we can maybe implement that in some of our other sections. That would be great. Moving on, any more questions?
I have a
or-
question. Hi. Going back to page 57, the citations that were issued at the top of the page, they're divided up into licensee and non-licensee, and the very top non-licensee number, citations issued 820, appealed 347, compliance 530. I'm just curious on that top number. It would be nice, and maybe you have this information somewhere, these citations, what is the number of those going to, what is the dollar amount associated with those citations? I mean, are these small fries, or are they big offenders? And then I'm asking that because I heard in the meeting this morning with licensing, they're no longer interested in having a handy person's license, and for good reasons or whatever reasons, it's now to the bottom of the priority list. And I just want to know, I mean, are some of these individuals close to the $500 threshold or for being able to do smaller jobs? In that meeting, I also heard the report by the Little Hoover Commission and the efforts that are being sought, not just statewide, but nationally, to do something about licensing and that. So can you see where I'm going with all this? I'd like to have some information that shows us, are these, small fries or are these bigger offenders? And then with regard to the appealed citations, are these people that are working out of their class, most of those appealed citations? Because it seems pretty cut and dry to me, if they're working without a license and they don't have one, they're really not going to appeal it. So I'd like to know who those people are, too.
Yes, I can comment on those three issues. We absolutely can provide the committee and the board with the average citation dollar amount. Now, with the exception of unlicensed practice, our limit in issuing a citation with a civil penalty is $5,000. That's substantially lower than, say, the Division of Occupational Safety and Health that will assess a penalty of $20,000 or $30,000 for, say, an injury on a forklift. But our limit is $5,000 for a licensee citation, with the exception of aiding and abetting an unlicensed contractor, in which case it would be $15,000. But we do have that data available, and we work very closely with our budget chief. Stacy Paul is with us today. So we're always looking at how we're assessing those and how much we're collecting, and we can include that in the future. The other, as far as issuing a citation contractor, I don't know, Jesse, you want to comment on that? I think you're not going to find a lot that are being issued for contractors that are contracting for $500, but we can compile those statistics. It's readily available. We do, when we include a complaint, we always put down the contract amount. So for the next meeting, we can provide that information to you, so you can see what type of unlicensed practice complaints that we're working.
Well, there may well be unlicensed individuals between $500 and maybe up to $1,000 or something like that. I'm not glued to that one number, but...
No, there absolutely could be.
Okay, that'd be great. I'd love to have that.
Sure. And there was something else I wanted to point out on this sheet, and that would be the statement of issues. So we do indicate how many application denials went to an appeal, and you'll see the number for 2016 for last year was 73. That was a question that was asked during the licensing committee meeting.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Moving on to Agenda Item D, update on workers' compensation enforcement strategies, resources, and accomplishments. Dave?
Thank you. On page 62, you'll see where we have a summary of what we've accomplished in 2016. At December 2015 board meeting, we were instructed to implement 5 workers' compensation enforcement strategies. I just want to comment on those real quickly. One was to prioritize consumer complaints that involve workers' compensation insurance compliance. And that's interesting. We look at consumer complaints, we find that the average for last year was about 43% of the complaints we receive are filed against a contractor as an exemption from workers' comp on file. We wanted to look at workers' comp insurance for specific classifications, and those are listed on that page. We wanted to perform an analysis of public works contractors registered with DIR that don't have workers' comp. That's now segued into working with the California Air Resources Board. We researched a construction monitor database to determine how many contractors, to identify contractors that were obtaining permits. I believe it was for over $20,000 valuation on remodels or additions. And if they did not have a workers' comp policy, they become part of our program to educate them and hopefully bring them into compliance, and then to pursue state agency partnerships. Now, we put a lot of effort and work into this program, this project, and our return on the investment was about 10%. So we didn't have a lot of success in educating. It's not that we did a lot of enforcement here. We did suspend some licenses, but for the most part, it was mailing letters, contacting people, trying to obtain compliance with workers' comp requirements, and 10% of those that we reached out to ultimately obtained a policy. Now, during that same period of time, our Intake Mediation Center continued to use what we call our license suspension program, meaning if we identify that you have an employee and you have an exemption on file, which is false, we will implement that suspension process where we notify them. We give them 30 days to obtain a policy ideally. However, some will simply file a new exemption. But what has happened with that policy, that program, is we did obtain 133 new workers' compensation insurance policies in 2016, and we suspended approximately 50 licenses a month. I did want to mention that one thing that compromised this program a little bit was our high vacancy rate in enforcement. A lot of this work was done in the intake mediation centers. They need 30 consumer service representatives to manage incoming consumer complaints. They were running about 22 for the year, and so we weren't able to put as much attention on this as we would have liked. But in evaluating that and meeting with staff, we thought there might be something we could do a little bit differently in 2017. And we also know that there's some legislative interest in looking at certain classifications to require workers' compensation insurance. We have Johnny Zammer's law here from the California Roofing Contractors Association, and Johnny was involved in legislation that requires the roofing contractors to all have a workers' comp policy. So what we wanted to look at is, are there other classifications that should have a policy, should be required to have a workers' compensation insurance policy, because you really can't do the work without that. You'll see that on page 63. We identified, I believe it was 7 different classifications we wanted to look at. Now, this is just getting off the ground. We've developed strategies so that we can identify, generally through an undercover capacity, whether or not these exemptions on file are legitimate. And when we did the 2016 pilot, it was pretty much in our intake mediation center. Now we're looking at the SWIFT unit. The SWIFT unit asked to be part of this. And we have an employee that's on limited duty, and she's able to, my understanding is she would like to be the lead on addressing these classifications. And I wanted to share with you some of the findings that we had within the last week. We started with the tree service contractors. And what we did is we looked at the 41 that have a workers' comp exemption on file. We researched the 41s to look at their business addresses to determine if the business address was commercial or residential. Interestingly enough, 5 out of the 41 were commercial. The rest they're working out of their homes. But what we did is we identified 5 that we wanted to, through surveillance, through other undercover operations, to determine if they truly were working by themselves, meaning you can have an exemption from workers' compensation insurance, but you can't have any workers. You'd have to do the work yourself. The personnel of record, in most cases, could perform the work. Now, we looked at 5 of them. We clearly identified that 4 out of the 5 were running at least one crew, if not multiple tree trimming crews. The 5th one is still inconclusive. However, we did pay a visit to their business location, and they do have more than one truck, and it's for tree trimming, and so you can't drive more than one truck at one time. So it's possible that, it's possible that you have 5 out of compliance for the tree trimmers. So that was kind of interesting. We then looked at the A general engineering contractors, and a little bit different there. It appears that some of these A contractors are not actually contracting. They may be operating a transmission shop or doing some other business. So our research into the A's as of yesterday is that 50% of the A's that we looked at have a false exemption. The other 50% may have an active license that they're not currently using. So we're pretty excited about that, and you'll see on the last page.
Question, Dave.
Yes.
So how would requiring the contractor, the licensed person, to have workers' comp for themselves help in identifying that that same individual has employees that don't have workers? I mean, I don't get the connect.
Excuse me, you may not need to have workers' compensation insurance for yourself as personnel of record. What we're looking at, though, is whether or not there are classifications that almost always have workers. Johnny's here, you want him to speak to this, but the roofers looked at this and said, who puts a roof on or does a tear off by themselves? They have workers. So it makes sense for the industry that they would all have to have a workers' compensation policy because they have employee labor. We're looking at tree trimmers. As I mentioned, we've not found one yet that doesn't have more tree trimmers working for them. Another trade we want to look at is concrete. Can you pour concrete by yourself? I've done it by myself. Didn't come out well. So, do my own sample. No, I don't know where that goes, but that's part of it, just to see if these exemptions, maybe there are exemptions that are true, and they need to, that needs to be an option for some trades. That's what we hope to come back to the board with. Our thought is we should have this completed by the June board meeting. But we also have DAs that want to help to look at this problem. They're funded by the Department of Insurance, so there will be an enforcement angle to this. But right now, we're capturing the information. We are going to reach out to these contractors, and through an undercover capacity, we're clearly determining they have workers. So one thought is we're going to bring them in, and we have the authority to bring them in and tell them what is going on here. You know, I hope it'll be a wake-up call for the industry, and we have success with this. Of course, we're going to work with our public affairs and our chief, Rick Lopes, and making sure that we get the word out, perhaps through the quarterly newsletter or something else.
So you know, I have some questions
Okay.
here, and I appreciate the individual that's here from, I guess that's you, sir, right? From the roofing industry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Johnny Zammerslaw.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how you translate that situation, the roofing situation, to, I guess I'm still backing up to that question that I just asked, and I'm not sure how that translates to people that pour concrete, such as yourself, but there are individuals that do those things. And I do understand it's, you know, it's a risky business being up on a roof, but I actually have, in my experience of many years as a building contractor, seen many roofers stack. Usually there's a conveyor belt that the supplier sends out, and that's how they load it. And I've seen individual roofers load and resheet. You know, they don't do the tear off, and I'm not sure, do we have a separate license for demolition contractors of the residential nature? Maybe that might be something we look into. And I don't mean to take too much time as the devil's advocate here, but it is my nature, so that's why I'm doing it. With regard to that, and, you know, you're selecting these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trades that you want to focus on. I'm not sure how all that translates with each other. I go back to page 62, and I look at these percentages that we've come up with for folks that have exemptions, and I can't help but wonder, once again, you know, what's the income level of some of these people, and are they doing commercial? You said, you know, you did that one statistic where I think you said 5% of those individuals that had commercial licenses were working out of their home. I'm not sure how relevant that is. I don't see that as necessarily saying that they're operating I'm glad you're doing the follow-up, so we know, you know, where this is going and those individuals that are breaking the law. But it would be nice, once again, to have some more information associated with, say, an electrical license or a plumbing license. Often in the residential world, these or licensed classification C10s and 36s work alone, and it's not unusual to see somebody do an entire remodel or a 5,000 square foot house on their own as a plumber, as an electrician. Those are the people I worked with for 34, 40 years almost. And I'm not saying that everyone's like that. It would just be nice to have more information so we can see the breakout and that we can focus, instead of the innuendo, which is what I'm resisting here. There's just this constant innuendo that, you know, this myriad of licensees that are, you know, struggling, the middle income section of the world, to run a business. And I just would like to have more information to see who really are these great offenders.
Well, that's what this pilot is going to do, because when we come back to you, what we're doing is we are not telling them we're calling from the contractors board or asking them to come out to our undercover operation because we're asking them, we need a concrete slab to be poured. Do you do the work with your own crews? That's the kind of data that we're going to have. They could say, no, I can't do a job that large, but that's not what they're telling us so far. They're saying, absolutely, I got multiple crews, they work directly for me. Now, they shouldn't say that if it's not true. So that's why what we're looking at here, and this is what our SWIFT unit wanted to focus on, is to be very clear, and it's going to model the industry. We may absolutely come back to you and say that there are landscape contractors out there are many of them, that work by themselves. And so it's great that we have an exemption, and we'll be happy to come back with that finding. But I don't know what it's going to be right now. I'm just telling you that we only worked for a few days last week on it, and this is what we found so far. But this will be a well-thought-out report, and we're going to present it to the board at the June board meeting.
Okay, on the other side of that, and I hear where you're going with that, but I am wondering if there's something that we can do in the application or renewal process that helps us identify and maybe it's not even legal, but the income level of somebody that is renewing their license or first time, these first time applicants. You're smiling, and you're shaking your head no.
No,
so.
I don't know.
And you don't like it either.
Does Christie like it?
No, I mean, it's not a requirement that people disclose their income, and it doesn't serve any public protection, benefit. So if we're going to impose a requirement that people disclose personally identifiable information, personal information, it has to be for a public purpose. And so since there's no real public policy objective behind that would serve to protect the public, then we couldn't require it. I mean, it's currently not required, but if we wanted to propose it, we would have to have a public policy rationale for it. So we're kind of getting off topic here. So the workers' compensation investigative enforcement plan is what you should probably focus your comments on.
Or don't put the percentages in the next brief, because I can't ignore that. I'm sorry. I've been on this board too long to ignore that, and I don't like the innuendo. And I am a small contractor, and I get people calling me, guys, just 2 weeks ago, somebody I know and had to bid against, and he's just up in arms furious about, some pressure he's been getting from the board. So I feel like I have to state that. And I do believe that that is my constituency representing the small fry. So having said that, I'll just say thank you all.
I believe the board requested those percentages, right, Mr. Fote? That's my recollection, was that they asked you to put that in. That's probably why it's in there.
I requested it.
Okay.
Question or comment? Since I don't pour my own driveway cement, I was wondering if this, and I guess I'm asking about workers' comp premiums, and I don't know if you or someone on this board has the answer to this. I think a contractor, and I'm not a contractor, but I try to put myself in their shoes. I'm not sure if workers' comp premiums are so high that it's a big cost for them to have this on an annual basis. Is there any possibility that, for example, in your case, that maybe you may hire someone once in a while to assist you with your projects? Does workers' comp premiums allow you to kind of have a part-time or as you need it premium so that you don't have to have that cost all year long, only when you need it? That's one question. The other comment I have is the ones that you identified as that you're going to be looking at a little bit more, have you tried to work with these associations or their trade groups to kind of have them assist you in trying to, their licensees understand the reason why the Contractor State License Board is so concerned about the issue of them having workers' comp. And I mean, I have an electrician, we have an electrician here that in his industry, 57% are exempt. I don't know if that's unbelievable. Okay. What role maybe could the Electrical Association assist us in getting the message out? Hey, this is why we're pushing this. And in your case, that people coming to you, well, maybe they don't understand, the position of the contractors board. They don't understand why it's important to protect the homeowner in this type of a situation. A couple of weeks ago, I got an estimate for some new windows. And the guy came in, he said, I'll do this for X number of dollars. And I said, well, who's going to do it? He says, well, I have 3 installers. Okay, perfect. I went to check the license, no workers' comp. Okay? So I say, well, does he have an option of contracting out that work? So what happens if they come to you and say, well, I contract that out. Every time I have an installation, I just contract out to X. And I don't know if window installers are supposed to be licensed. But there's people, there's maybe some thoughts here that we might want to explore and maybe look at. Because it is an issue that I as a homeowner would be very concerned about if I'm going to have someone be doing that in my home. I don't want to be liable for any type of injury.
I want to clarify something. I'm speaking about a certain class of licensed individuals who don't have employees. And I don't have a problem with how we have the requirement that you must sign under penalty of perjury an application that says. What I'm having a problem with is the assumption by way of these strong percentages that indicate that the industry is infiltrated by these strong percentages with individuals, that there's this assumption out there that contractors are, for the most part, trying to get around the laws of the state not having workers' compensation. That's what I don't like. I think it's a very important thing to have as an employer. I can't tell you the number of times in my years of business how it has not helped me, but helped that employee who fell off a ladder to decide whether or not they were going to continue as a carpenter or move on to a different
Just one comment, Joan and Pastor. I understand where you both are going with this, but I would like to ask that we just kind of let the pilot program continue. I know these percentages may seem high, but that's the importance of the investigation and the sting operations that are going to be conducted. So in June, when they come back with some findings, that might go down a lot, and then we won't have the issue with, the perception of people just kind of being out there.
My
bypassing
only,
the system.
in line with the strategies, I thought maybe one of the strategies was to work with the associations, as an additional one to maybe consider. I mean, if they think that's a good idea, go for it. If not, well, that's something that you can decide as staff.
Yeah, if I could just make a quick comment on two of Pastor's questions. The first was, what does it cost to have a workers' comp policy? You can obtain a policy through state fund for approximately $800. Now, the way that would work is when you hire someone, you have to make them aware of your payroll, and you pay a portion of the payroll as your premium. I know Frank here is, I'm sure, an expert on workers' comp. It's very expensive. It really is. And there's been a study that was performed out of the University of Berkeley by a professor named Frank Neuhauser. And what he found is that because there are so many businesses that don't pay their workers' comp, that's increasing those that do pays raise significantly, by 200%. It's incredible, because what people don't realize is that when you pay workers' compensation insurance, you're paying a portion of that that goes into the Uninsured Employers Benefit Trust Fund. So when somebody's hurt, they go to the fund, so those that are paying their workers' comp are paying for those that don't have it. And we'll include that in our findings for our report for the June board meeting. And absolutely, we want to work with industry, with Richard Markison, Frank Zamrazal, and others. That's a great idea. We worked with the landscape contractors on what they called their Helping Hands program to get people licensed. Maybe we can do something similar for workers' comp. So thank you.
Any more questions or comments regarding workers' comp? Okay. Oh, sorry about that.
Thank you. Richard Markison. Mr. Herrera, on behalf of my clients who also operate apprenticeship programs, and I'm sure that Mr. Shedder's NECA program is similar, before we will dispatch an apprentice to a contractor, which is, as you know, a requirement under the Public Works Law, we will verify the existence of the workers' compensation policy to ensure that, at least for the apprentices that we are sending to those contractors, that they are covered under a valid workers' compensation policy. And we would certainly be happy to distribute in our contractor newsletter any information that the board would like to go out to contractors stressing the importance of workers' compensation insurance policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item E, CSLB's Solar Task Force update regarding consumer complaints and enforcement objectives. I'd like to begin by recognizing Bernadette Del Chiaro. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Del Chiaro.
Del Chiaro.
Yeah.
I apologize. Executive Director of the California Solar Energy Industry Association, Bernadette has worked closely with our enforcement staff in developing strategies to increase consumer satisfaction on solar projects and reduce consumer complaints. I'd like to add that under Bernadette's leadership, SCIA has taken the position that applications for membership will only be accepted if the applicant is a licensed contractor. This has been very vital to our mutual consumer protection goal of making sure that solar contractors are appropriately licensed. Dave, would you let the committee know what you guys are working on?
Thank you. I would like to point out, though, that there are a couple of typos in this update, and the first would be we simply stated SEIA when we need to clarify we're working with the California Solar Industry Association. And also that we have worked effectively with them for quite a number of years. But not only that, they've been very proactive in identifying problems. I indicated in this update that they had recently implemented a new program to require licensure, and that's been something they've had in place for quite some time. If you look at page 66, we have an update regarding our power purchase agreement contracts. And I just want to back up, if I could, just to tell you a little bit about the task force that we put together. In Southern California, we have a part-time investigator working out of the San Diego office, and she's been focusing on contractors, and a couple of them, that are engaged in criminal activity, and she's working very closely with the district attorney to address that. Out of our Norwalk office, we have an investigator that's working on contractors that aren't necessarily engaged in criminal activity, but they have business practices that need to be corrected. We have a peace officer that's working in our West Covina office, and she is dedicated to working with the Federal Trade Commission out of Dallas, Texas. And that's kind of interesting because what they're looking at is some of the issues that have come before the board, and that would be the robocalls, perhaps they're targeting a certain ethnic group, how they're soliciting the work. So that's a fascinating investigation. It's moving very quickly. And it's the first time I'm aware of that we have worked directly with the Federal Trade Commission. In Northern California, we have 2 investigators that are working with multi-state solar contractors and other contractors that are receiving a number of complaints, but we believe we can work with those contractors to correct the business practices. And what we've done with with 3 of the 5 is we've separated out the type of complaints that they have. And what we're looking at is we're not looking at workmanship complaints because we don't have a lot of workmanship issues. But what we are looking at is the business practices that are resulting in the consumer complaint, looking for an opportunity to work with that contractor to reduce those complaints in the future. Our goal is to weed the bad actors out of the marketplace, but for those that have a business that can survive and thrive, we want to work with them. We want California to continue to be the leader in solar, and we really believe we can accomplish that. And by working with the industry, we've made a lot of strides. And our goal for the next, for the next 6 months is to reduce the consumer complaints we came out by 38%, not exactly a round number, but we're currently receiving 40 consumer complaints a month. We're going to get that down to 25. That's the goal. And we're able to settle a lot of cases because of working with these contractors. But what I want to do is I want to just give you a little bit of a summary of the type of complaints that we're receiving so you have an idea as to the problem, and maybe we can come up with some solutions for that. The first would be the power purchase agreements. The one issue is the salespeople are not registered. And while we've overcome the license issue, I should back up for a second, we initially had a concern that we had solar contractors and others operating unlicensed. When we looked at our solar complaints and preparing for this meeting, we only found one unlicensed contractor, so that's pretty much been taken care of. And with the industry's support requiring a license for leases, the power purchase agreements, and the fixed price contracts, doesn't seem to be a real problem today. What we still have, though, is an issue with some contractors regarding the home improvement contract requirements. And it's important that we note that, because if you look at page 66, and we look at the power purchase agreements, a lot of these cases, these complaints relate to an unregistered salesperson. We have a problem with the work not being clearly described as to what's going to be done. We have misrepresentation, and that's the number one reason why we get the complaints that relate to what we call the PPAs, because the consumer doesn't understand that if they're part of what they call the CARE program, they're over a certain age, they're paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour for power, and here they contract for a power purchase agreement, and now they're paying 15 cents a kilowatt hour, so now they're paying more. Had they been aware of that, maybe they want to pay more to go green, that would be okay. The problem is they didn't realize that when they signed the contract, so just really want to make sure the contract is clear as to what they're signing up for. And the last one, as far as the PPAs, would be the misrepresentation, making false statements. With the green financing, again, salespeople not being registered, that's an issue. One of the main concerns about green financing is the contractors, on some occasions, are getting paid in advance of work performed. I do understand that most of these lenders are requiring some type of completion certificate, but not all of them. And that's a problem, because we do have a number of complaints that we are working and that we have referred to DAs that relate to contractors that have been paid in full from the lender, and they haven't either performed the work or they have performed minimal work. That's a problem, and that results in a referral to the DA. With the lease agreements, we're still seeing problems with leases, and that generally includes the escalating lease payment. Again, the salesperson not being registered, they didn't understand what they were signing up for. And one of the biggest issues with the leases is how much will you ultimately be paying for the lease? The consumer needs to make an informed decision. If they may be able to go down to the bank, take out a loan, and purchase a solar system up front for maybe $30,000 or more. But they don't realize when they sign up for a lease, they may be paying $100,000 or more over the terms of the lease. And so when they realize that, after the fact, that's a problem. And the other issue I want to bring forward is that many of these contracts are signed by DocuSign electronically, and when you're dealing with some of our elderly population, they don't have an email address, and they'll set one up for them, and they don't actually get the contract, they don't know what they've signed up for, and now they're locked into an agreement with a lien on the home, and they can't refinance or sell their house. So we're taking a hard look at that, and we have Ed Murray here too. And Ed, you put your hand up? Because he's an industry expert in solar, and he's been extremely important to us on some of our most significant cases. We have a number of felony cases down in Southern California right now where contractors didn't perform the work that they were supposed to, and Ed was the expert on those cases, and we're looking forward to working with our Public Affairs Office to publicize when we have convictions. Right now we just have charges filed, so we'll leave it at that. And at this point, I was wondering if Bernadette Del Chiaro could join us and maybe say a few words about how we can work on the contract so that the existing law that we have for home improvement requirements, we can make that work for all three of these type of agreements.
Great. Thank you so much, David Fote, and to the registrar and for the whole board for having us, giving us a chance to come present to you today. My name is Bernadette Del Chiaro. I'm the executive director of the California Solar Energy Industries Association. We are the state industry association in California. We've about 450 members statewide. Roughly half of those are contractors, and the remainder are manufacturers and financiers and service providers to the industry. There are, as you all know, maybe 3 or 4 times that many companies that are in the solar industry in California. So we really work hard to make sure that we're educating the entire industry, but we sort of know that we represent sort of the creme de la creme, if you will, of the industry, and we make sure to do that through license background checks before we allow a company into. And there's a lot of education that needs to happen on that front. It happens on their way in the door to CalSIA. So I appreciate the recognition of that. We really appreciate the CSLB's work on making sure that what we're building here is a solid, long-term solar industry. We have been around for 40 years. We were founded in 1977. I think Ed was an aspiring 3-year-old contractor at the time. And we're celebrating our 40th anniversary, and we have every intention to be around for the next 40 years and to make sure that the systems we're installing today, warranted for as long as 20 years at a time, are also there and the consumers are happy with us. So we feel like this is a partnership with the CSLB because having strong regulations and enforcement and weeding out the bad apples is actually critical to that mission. To give you just a quick sense of all the things we're doing, one is the licensing enforcement. We also want to thank the registrar and your staff for working with us in 2015 and passing SB 561, which was an effort to, through streamlining, also actually improve the number of home improvement salesperson licenses that are being applied for and complied with in the state. So both having a contractor's license, but the HIS licensing is also really important to us. So we appreciate all the work on that. 2 is just consumer education. We're in the process of developing a guide and a 1-page fact sheet that was intended to get in the hands of consumers long before they pick up the phone and call a contractor. So giving consumers really simple, free of legalese information about what they need to look for when they're going solar, and in breaking down in really simple language the financing options. It's great that consumers have lots of financing options for going solar. That's progress, but they need to understand what they're getting into. And we think actually having a simple guide that's really informed and shows that there's a third party putting that out there, and it's not just coming from a contractor is critical. We're also going to be working with organizations like the AARP, doing webinars and other information outreach that's targeted to organizations that can reach specific markets, so we want to make sure they have information. The third item I really want to highlight is disclosures and improved contract terms, and this is what we really want to work with. David and his team at the CSLB, we are in agreement that having sort of standardized, simplified disclosures prior to that contract being signed and then making sure that contract has the important and most critical terms in it. We just, in fact, submitted public comments to the California Public Utilities Commission stating as much that we would like to work with the CSLB on this, and we think it's important, and really, frankly, the industry has grown up enough, and again, all of these different financing opportunities require us to take this next step, so the timing is right. I do want to make notice, though, that the legislature did pass a PACE, green financing disclosure law. I believe it's AB 2969, but don't quote me. It's Debobnier was the author, and that actually, for just the green financing or the PACE financing, requires additional disclosures. But for all of the other solar financing options out there, including cash purchases, I think there's some room for improvement, and we really look forward to working with you. I asked actually my board president here, Ed Murray, to also speak. He can also talk about just what we do, rolling up our sleeves and enforcing ethics within the industry. When we receive complaints, we're open to receiving complaints from the public through CalSIA's website, and we do receive about 1 a month, and we actively work to resolve those issues, and sometimes referring to the CSLB, and sometimes just working with the contractor and making sure those issues are resolved. So let me introduce Ed real quick.
Hi, good morning. Ed Murray. I'm a local contractor in Aztec Solar in Rancho Cordova. We have about 30 souls that work for us installing solar systems. Unfortunately, this week we didn't install much. We're building an ark in our office. But I wanted to let you know I've been the chair of the ethics committee since 1987. at Calcia. I started in solar in '78 in Davis at Village Homes, installing most of the homes, most of the solar on the water heating side, and I've been doing it ever since, and I've been a licensed contractor since 1980. So I've seen the growth of the industry. I've also seen the black eye in the industry when we had tax credits in the early '80s, and then the tax credits went away, and we went from 650 contractors in '84 to 37 contractors in '87. And unfortunately, we had a black eye, and we tried to get over that. And now we want to make sure that we're doing it right. So we have training for the installers, we have training for the contractors. We're trying to make sure that the certifications for the systems are in place so that everything is done properly. We have a consumer protection committee in Calcia that's staffed by most of the bigger members and smaller contractors, representative across the board of the industry. And we are working diligently to put consumer protection into place because we want to be around. And I want to be around for another 30 years. Also, I've worked with Chief Vogt and the deputies in the office, and personally been in sting operations, which was kind of cool. And I can tell you that these guys are doing a great job. And so the system works now. I don't think there's much more that we can do except for work with industry association. The laws are working. The deputies are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And the communication's been wonderful. So it's a great public-private partnership that we have. So I thank you guys for doing what you're doing and doing a great job at it.
Thank you.
Both of you, thank you very much for being with us today, and we really, really appreciate the partnership because, we know solar is really kind of taken off really an uphill scale. And I read about you in the LA Times a couple of years ago. They did a wonderful article as far as your association and your leadership in that area. And maybe you can help us with this workers' comp issue too, with 47% or whatever it is that we're trying to work with it because, and let us know which direction maybe we can assist you and you could assist us with that area.
Yeah, thank you. I meant to mention that on the way up. I was pleased to see that the C46 license, which is the solar license, had the lowest percentage, but nevertheless, I want to repeat the words that the other gentleman said, that we would love to and be happy to use our association to increase the education and awareness.
Thank you.
And also figure out help with the pilot in whatever way is appropriate in terms of helping to identify. It's just sort of the numbers and the experience out in the field, and make sure that the small contractors struggling are heard and we get the right statistics, but also that they understand that this is a community problem and that we all need to be part of the solution. Yeah.
And as a licensed contractor that does it right, I don't want to be paying for the guys that don't do it right. And I also am competing with those guys that can do it cheaper. And so I want to make sure they're off the streets, or at least insured.
Just as a contractor, what is the average cost of a solar installation? Is there such a thing as an average cost?
The costs have come down considerably, but a typical home is between $10,000 and $20,000 for a solar electric system on a house. For a solar water heating system, which we also install, it's about $7,000 or $8,000. And then for a solar pool heater, it's about $5,000 to $7,000. So, but don't quote me. I have cards in my...
Do you know, a family member came to me because he had a door-to-door salesperson come to their door. And he came to show me the contract, see what I thought of it. Well, and it was $30,000, And I said, what? And I was looking for the photos of the contract because I didn't make copies. But I thought that was... that's incredible.
It depends upon the size of the house. Do you have a large usage?
It's in San Fernando Valley, San Fernando Valley and the tract homes, probably not 2 or 3 bedrooms.
They should call a Calcia contractor.
All right, so we need to stay on topic with this task force issue.
Can I ask a question of Bernadette? That one complaint a month, what is it? I'm surprised there's only one complaint a month that you receive, but what is the nature of those complaints?
Good question. Well, I think first of all, it's a good thing that consumers know to go, to the CSLB, frankly, for their complaints. I think that's a success in terms of that's really where, if it's a workmanship issue or some of these other issues, obviously, that's where they do need to go, and we do refer them to file a complaint with the CSLB if that seems like clearly the appropriate thing to do. It really runs the gamut. A lot of it is very miscellaneous type of complaints. So one of the most recent ones was somebody who wanted a specific type of module, who in the conversation with the sales agent was told that they were going to get a specific type of manufacturer's model panel installed on their roof, and in the end, they got a different type. It's still a photovoltaic system, but it's a slightly different module that was put on their roof. Still warranted, still producing electricity, but just wasn't what they were promised. And this particular customer was one of those that really get into the specific models and the various upsides of different models that are out there. And so in this case, we worked with the contractor and the manufacturer to make sure that the customer got what they were originally promised. And sometimes we can just play that role as the industry association of, just sort of getting all the sides to just come to a really reasonable, quick, and rational, action and resolution to the problem. But it runs the whole gamut. It's not typically, my roof is leaking. I think people know on those type of situations to come to the CSLB and not, it's not really, it's more this, they've gone to their contractor and they're not getting the answer they want, so they come to us. I don't know if you want to say anything more.
I appreciate hearing about how you're interested in educating consumers. How about the home improvement sales contractors? Do you have outreach to them as well in terms of approaching consumers or is that part of this new partnership that we're trying to establish with your industry?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, the home improvement sales agents work for the contractors that are the members of the association. We do actually a lot of educational work for the sales agents, the HIS licensed professionals within the industry. For example, next week we're doing what we call Contractor Day. It's a day-long training session. We're focusing on different elements, but we do have some specific issues around sales, and those are going to be then the licensed HIS individuals in the room. So it's all through the contractor. The biggest thing is we work to make sure that all of our contractors understand that all of their sales agent need to have a HIS license, and make sure that then they're in compliance and we know who they are and that they're properly being licensed. And then the education all flows in that direction, if that answers your question.
Well, I guess I'm wondering, is there a way of communicating the issues that pervade in this industry in terms of these salespeople going out to a house with a 18 and 12 pitch roof with sycamore trees or redwoods all around it that, they're not going to have any kind of sun whatsoever. You know what I'm talking about as a contractor. But, I mean, the do's and don'ts of who you are. I guess I'm talking about the honesty element when you're approaching consumers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 450 of whom, 225 are contractors that are members of an industry association like CalCia, they're really the good guys that do this right and wouldn't sell somebody a system underneath a shade tree. I think what we're talking about out there are the companies that are new market entrants that aren't properly, I think, trained and or maybe are unscrupulous. I think that's where some sort of standardized disclosure for the consumer becomes really important, because if the consumer understands, the proper disclosure would require the contractor to estimate how much solar electricity that solar system, that exact solar system with the orientation, the pitch, everything, is expected to generate in the course of a year. The consumer would have that in writing. It would be very clear to them, and then they would be able to check that in a year against their electricity billing, which would show them. And that would be a key, one way to sort of for the consumer to be protected against something. I mean, that's, again, the consumer education piece of it is you shouldn't put a solar system under a tree. I mean, I say that, I don't mean to be flippant about it. I think there's actually some education that needs to happen. And it's just, we're going to have to just have a kind of this battle is going to have to be on multiple fronts, is my thought. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Independent Roofing Contractors of California. We do apprenticeship training and journeyman advanced training in roofing. And solar is a big part of our industry. And I was telling Dave earlier that we train apprentices, and before our classes, each at the beginning of each set of classes, I normally visit the guys and talk to them about what they're doing out there in the field. And of course, we've been getting a lot of rain lately, and I'm always interested to know what they're working on, what they're doing out there in the field. And I don't mean to crack another egg into this omelet, but I think it's a very important aspect of the discussion about installation. And I think you hit sort of the nail on the head too, that there's the fact is, when I ask them what they're doing, I get a lot of hands up of going up, following up on the installation of solar installation. And it's happening more and more because of all the rain we're having. And this is perhaps a sleeping giant that's going to cascade into something a lot more ugly unless we tackle this in terms of training. I've been sort of, we've talked to the CSLB in the past about considering putting roofing into the mix of licenses that would be authorized, because that's our real estate up there. That the warranty is on that material that we put down, and there's all sorts of problems that can be unintentionally or just waved aside by not making sure that the training that takes place to get these guys familiar with putting platforms on roofs or solar installations, whatever, need to be done by professional in that industry. And so I would urge you guys to consider making that a part of the deal. Now, my questions to my roofing apprentices is, okay, were they your companies? Because we have a lot of guys who put solar down, and universally, the answer is no. We're following up on a problem with another installation from a flyby solar installation company who was out there and didn't, apparently didn't do it right. But in some instances, these guys can't be found or run down. So it's a big part of the equation here, and I don't think it can continue to be swept under the rug, or we're going to see a lot more litigation concerning improper installation of roof systems out there. Just a thought. And I did talk to Bernadette a little bit prior to the meeting, and I talked to her a little bit about training, and we very much are interested in getting together with the California Solar Industries Association to kind of collaborate, because I noticed that the requirements for training for the C42 and are not really consistent what would be appropriate for a full knowledge of how to attach things to roofs. So just a statement here.
This is my last question, I promise. Yeah, it's only 11:15. But I'm curious, as between the three of you, is there any uniform code with regard to attachment of, in the same way that there is in the roofing industry with flashings and that sort of thing? And has this translated down to building departments? I know this is kind of off of our bailiwick here, but,
It hasn't.
I mean, it really is the issue. Is there any uniform?
There is a standard in roofing for solar. It's out of the National Roofing Contractors Association, an institute for solar, but guys, our contractors are going off all the time to, get educated in this area.
And I just think that we should universalize it a little bit more for this particular.
So you might want to add this to a future agenda item if you want to discuss adding it as an objective, an enforcement objective. That'd be one thing we could discuss at this meeting, but if you want to discuss problems with solar energy system installation, that would probably be a future agenda item.
Well, I noticed it was off the table in terms of what the current isn't that right? You said it wasn't as far as.
It doesn't look like it's an objective that's listed here. That's what you're bringing up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And probably, I would strongly advise that it be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item F, 2016 through 18 strategic plan update discussion and possible action on 2017 through 2018 enforcement objectives. Dave.
Thank you. On page 72, I'll just quickly touch on where we're at with the previously approved objectives. The first was to develop an MOU with the Labor Commissioner's Office and to look at ways to address the civil wage and penalty assessments where we have the prime contractor being held jointly and severally liable with the subcontractor for not paying prevailing wages or not paying the employee wages that were due. This has been successful. We have Becky Like with us today in the audience. She was the Public Works investigator that put the first one together, and she went to hearing last week or within the last 10 days, and it worked surprisingly well. It's the first time we've ever gone to hearing with a case like that, but yet it seems like the judge got it. We can't talk more about it because the decision will be coming to the registrar down the road. But it's effective. The only thing we need to work on those, we need to get more referrals from the Labor Commissioner. There's not been a whole lot of them. We're getting more from industry in the Labor Commissioner's office. We're continuing our outreach with them. Second was to update civil penalties, continue to work with our case management staff. Deputy Chief Flores has been involved in that, trying to get the penalties up. We do have the $5,000 limit, which does limit how much we can assess. We've talked about solar industry strategies. We've also talked about workers' compensation, which is 2.4 at the top of page 73. Regarding reducing legal action expenditures, we've taken a real hard look at some of the cases that are going to citation. There are some that can be addressed through our arbitration program. What we've seen is an increase in arbitration of 20%. We've seen a correlating decrease in citations of 20%, so that'll reduce the cost. Also, I know the Legislative Committee is looking at a possible legislative proposal to provide for a different type of action that could be taken, which would even reduce costs even further if that was ultimately approved. As far as expanding enforcement targets, we are looking for the larger contractors when we're conducting our stings and also performing our sweeps. We're being effective there. We have two new proposals, though, for the committee today. And the first would be to implement a high-profile case protocol team. The theory behind this is we would have identified team members available in the event that we have a case that's receiving a lot of media attention. And what we found and we have found in high-profile cases that you have to move very quickly, that there's a lot of other state agencies involved. In the event that you have a catastrophic failure of a structure, you need to have a building official that's part of this. You need to make sure that you have somebody from the Public Affairs Office to manage the media calls. You need to have investigators that you can draw from and dedicate to the investigative needs. So if that was to be ultimately approved, what we would do is bring in our trainers, Mike Franklin as a Deputy Attorney General, and also Doug Galbraith, who you heard from earlier today, to talk about their experience and also provide training to the team. But again, it would be dedicated staff that could move very quickly. The next one would be to increase the C10 electrical contractor or classification renewal by $20 a year. I think it was back in 2010 where the contractors board was granted the authority to discipline C10 contractors for having uncertified electricians. And what we did is we worked very closely with industry to develop a strategy whereby the private compliance investigators would go out and gather the evidence. They would submit that evidence to the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement. At the time, it was Division of Apprenticeship Standards, now it's DLSC. But they would forward their investigator report to DLSC, they review it, they determine the person's not certified, they send it to the contractors board, we review it, and take action when appropriate. Now, when we first started to enforce this requirement, we had a lot of success for the first 2 years. The reality, though, is that it's not as successful today because our private compliance investigators are finding it very difficult to get information on the job sites. It's just not working. And so we've had meetings with the electrical industry to talk about this and how we can improve upon it. And it really seems that for this program to work, we need to increase the C10 renewal fee by $20 a year. We need to have a minimum of 2 contractors board investigators dedicated to this program that would go out with their partners from DLSC and the Labor Commissioner's office, depending on the type of job it is, to investigate, to get the information themselves, to write the cases, and then testify to their findings in a hearing. So that was the second objective, would be to perform the work necessary to increase the renewal fee by $20 per month.
So,
Or $20 per renewal.
question, this proposed team, you said dedicated, does that mean that they will not be required to do any additional duties?
No, they would be just on standby. Hopefully, we won't have a situation where we'll need them, but they would just be trained and identified that in the event that we have a major situation, if I can mention such as the Berkeley balcony being a good example of this, where you need to have staff that are trained, they know how to react. They would not be working on this high-profile team unless that type of catastrophic occurrence was present. But it would just be something that would be set up, you would know it existed, they would be trained in how to react, they would know how to work with the Public Affairs Office in the event they're approached by a reporter, that kind of thing.
Could I make a suggestion? That maybe you develop a plan instead of just having a team where it's like, if a case does hit, it's like, talk to the AG first and then get your public affairs team together and then maybe have training in progress, because it's like, you don't know if a case is going to hit in 2 months or 10 years. And if you just identify I guess, would you be identifying people constantly, training them? I don't know, that's just my suggestion.
We can absolutely reword this, because that was our idea, to take a look at how we've handled these situations in the past, to kind of do a debriefing, to put an actual plan together. So I think you're absolutely correct, we should reword this. It's not about just identifying people, it's about having a plan in place.
Question, when these incidents occur, has any of your staff ever been trained on, like, the ICS incident command? Do you guys do any of that type of training for those major incidents? No?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, well, that might be something that you guys can look into. I'd be glad to work with you guys on how to put that together, but that's exactly what it's for, is for major incidents, so that all parties can get together and everyone knows what their role is. So I don't think we need a motion for that. That's something that we can get done internally. Any questions or comments about that? As far as the additional $20 increase on all C10 electrical licenses, can we have a motion for that? Comment first, I'm sorry.
Can I just clarify the motion? Is it to add objective as indicated in 2.8 to the Enforcement Committee's strategic plan?
Second.
Is that your motion? I just want to make sure I got it correctly. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Second.
That's all right. Richard Markison for Western Electrical Contractors Association. We included the $20 fee authority in SB 1362 that Chief Vogt referred to in 2008, and we certainly support imposing the fee and dedicating those resources to enforce the electrician certification program, and appreciate the effort.
Thank you. Heather, did you get the wording for that motion? Can we call roll, please?
Could I just have a question or comment? I'm glad it's been vetted with the electrical folks. That was my question, but I'm glad that's been vetted.
Joan Hancock.
Aye.
Pastor Herrera.
Aye.
Marla Richardson.
Aye.
Frank Shetter. Susan Granzella.
Aye.
Ed Lang.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Unless there are any other questions, we're going to move to item letter G, the adjournment. Is there?
So moved. So moved.
Second.
Thank you. That concludes the Enforcement Committee meeting. Thank you.